The following video has been created without the use of AI. Please support your human content creators by liking the video and commenting something down below. Subscribing is optional. Now please, enjoy the show. The air was thick with electricity. Sky covered in black clouds. And normally on days like these, Bakugou Katsuki would spend his time training. Ever since his UA days, criminal activity had been steadily decreasing. Or more, no one ever even came close to Tomoe Shigaraki's threat. And while the explosive blonde would never admit this to anyone, he felt as if he peaked in high school. His days spent with training and patrols, and maybe, just maybe, he caught a shoplifter or a quirk activist illegally showing off their superpower. It were those that were at least a little thrilling to him, though. They were super strong by default, but lacked any kind of training, talent, or creativity. With a shudder, he remembered the psychic who, in an attempt to enslave the entire population of Japan, blew up his own head mid-negotiations. And worst of all, he hasn't made a single human connection outside of his goddamn schoolmates. Silently, the blonde yearned for a connection that didn't... Silently, the blonde yearned for a connection who didn't know of his childhood or awkward teen years. And while he was too proud to even admit it to himself, he really wanted a girlfriend. Yo! That was Kirishima. The two men worked at the same agency with Zero, Tokoyami, and Deku, who, while having lost One for All, was using a special designed suit that mimicked his old abilities. In fact, he somehow managed to reach number 1 with it, which really hurt Kachan's ego. After all, he was a quirkless loser. But alas, he didn't want to end up like Todoroki's old man, so he forced himself to ignore it, and even got a new hobby: meditation. You look tired, Dynamite. Well, maybe Bakugou did let his mind wander a bit. What do you mean, shitty hair? Kirishima sighed, but smiled nevertheless. How about you clock out early today, huh? I mean, Bakugou's eyes narrowed dangerously, so Kirishima quickly added, I mean, we both know in the rain your quirk is slightly less effective, and you would be solely relying on your sweat tanks. As if to underline what he was saying, nature decided to slowly begin its dripping, an omen of the upcoming shower. Yeah, but Kirishima slapped his back. Remember what we learned at UA? Your own safety is just as important as the safety of the civilians. The deadpan Katsuki gave Kirishima was quite telling, and he took a step back, afraid he was going to explode. And you're right, I suppose after our time there, I think we kinda lost the right to say that, huh? A moment of silence followed. Look, Bakugou grunted. If it's that important to you extras that I take a break so you can keep up with me, so be it. I'm tired. Angrily, he held down his hands and shot himself into the sky. And with a smirk, Kirishima leaned against the wall of a nearby building. Man, I just wanted to end our patrol early to not get stuck in the rain. No need to get mad at me. Pet, pet, pet. Tap, tap, tap. Your paws carried you forward, tippy-toeing over fences, walls, roofs, leaping and climbing the concrete jungle that you lived in. You were homeless, a drifter, a stray, an unwanted member of society. Ever since the Liberation Front decided to turn Japan into a battlefield, you had taken a liking to the post-apocalyptic aesthetic, getting used to the lifestyle of using your natural abilities to survive in the outside. It was fun if it wasn't for the hunger, But as the first raindrops hit your back, you arched your body. Oh, this was no good. Oh well, you purred. There was one place you always found shelter in, and it just so happened to be quite nearby, as if you had planned it. With your tail raised over your head, you begin making your way towards Alfred Heights, a large multi-level penthouse complex for heroes. One needed to be in the top 50 to even register for a spot there. It was very high class, quite expensive too. Well, only for the lower top 50, that is. The higher ranking, the less it cost. The place was like a fortress, to keep Japan's finest fed and relaxed. Not bad for a roughed-up street cat like you to find shelter in, wasn't it? The outside of the structure was in a brutalist style, quite European with that, painted in white. You climbed up a nearby tree, through which you just barely managed to reach a rectangular-shaped ledge, which itself was just barely close enough to the first balcony of the building. They weren't small balconies either. They were huge. Even fit swimming pools, bars, and other stuff on them. Leap after leap, you made your way up to the 7th floor of the massive building. The first few times you had tried ascending Alfred Heights, you caused an alarm. Just barely managed to hide in time not to get into trouble. Honestly, by now you must have caused a ruckus by getting detected by every single outside camera at least once. But finally, you made the last jump. Your paws gripping the balcony railing just barely. And so, exhausted, you made it onto the floor. Lying on your back, exhausted. You allowed the rain to soak you up. The water had made your fur heavy, but you still got it. After a few moments of catching your breath, you stretched and walked towards the balcony door. As always, it was open. The only door in this entire dog-bitten building that was always unlocked. Bakugou swiped his keycard, and after a beep later, he entered his home. It was a beautiful thing he got himself. Wooden flooring, grey minimalist-style furniture, huge TV hanging over a fireplace, and an open door that led to his balcony. Damn it. He deadpanned. Open door. Are you kidding me? He didn't even get a single moment of sleep, he thought. Sighing, he slumped over to the glass door, closing it with a quiet thud. He could see the pitter-patter of small, paw-shaped feet going from the balcony to his bathroom. Annoyed, he stopped before it, crossing his arms with a stone-cold expression. Luckily, it wasn't long until the handle was pushed down, and as his eyes met yours, you smiled back at Bakugou, whose own narrowed into tiny slits. "Nya," you meowed. "Don't! I told you to stop coming!" he shouted at you. Your ears twitched, your tail swishing excitedly as you purred. "Aw, come on." You jumped forward, rubbing your wet head against his chin. You could smell his anger. It was overpowering, but his shampoo was stronger just a tiny bit. "Stop rubbing your wet flea pelt in my face!" Offended, you took a step back. "I might be a little street louse, but I don't have fleas. God's gotta take care of herself after all." "Yeah." But the excited swishing of your tail betrayed your faked anger. Bakugou meanwhile turned his hands to fists. "Oh, come on, Bakugou. Don't be like that. Yeah." You quickly nestled against him. The sound of your purring was louder than his own thoughts, as you made his clothes wet with your fur. "I know you like my company, Bakugou." "Stop calling me that." "But that's your name." He flashed his teeth. "Why are you even here, Didn't I tell you to stop coming?" "Every time, but you always leave the balcony door open. Can and you blame a little kitty cat for wanting to come in for a little cat nap. Yeah. Enough with the cat puns. Aw, you're now fun. You hissed. Sliding down his body, you began to gallop away on all fours to the second floor of Bakugou's penthouse. Here, he had his massive bedroom, and a different door led to a smaller, more private bathroom that you didn't use out of courtesy, as it was smaller, especially the drain, which you clogged once. By all means, you were human, going by the name of Niaomi. A mutation quirk left you with a rather devious little cat body. And little you were just barely reaching Bakugou's chin with your head. And he already was on the smaller side when it came to his stature. Your body was lean with long arms and legs, and short yet densely packed black fur covered your entire body. Minus your right hand and face. There, your fur was as white as snow. Your face was quite cat-like too, but not like pure beast folk. You had normal human eyes. The fur at the top of your head was shoulder long, and minus your cat nose, your face was shaped like that of a human too. Just thanks to the hairs, it had a slightly more rounded appearance, giving you a somewhat of a baby face. Your hands and feet had little cat beans, despite very obviously being just fur-covered normal ones. When you were 14, the Liberation War left you orphaned. And by the time you turned 16, 17, you had become a runaway from the emergency orphanage you had been housed in. While others would become villains immediately, your cat-like devil-may-care attitude only made you wonder about your next meal and sunny spot to nap in. So while Japan was in ruins, you got to enjoy your best life while others suffered around you. Not that you cared. It was only after the reconstruction efforts had been given additional funding from Germany and America that buildings just seemed to pop out of nowhere. Time moved so fast at that point, it was incredibly hard to follow. It gave you a little headache, but you managed. It was by accident, or more a personal challenge, that you climbed Alfred Heights to begin with. That you then stumbled upon Bakugou's open balcony door. And since then, you had been a constant guest in his penthouse, when it rained outside at least. You rolled yourself into a little ball on his bed, head neatly placed on your paws, closing your eyes. Meanwhile, Bakugou proceeded to the kitchen. With a sigh, he grabbed the kitchen board you used to make yourself something to eat, throwing it into the dishwasher, cooking himself a meal afterwards. He was entirely unsure what the hell was happening. What compelled him to not just throw you out? What kept him from just putting you in jail for trespassing? Or, streaking. You were unclothed after all. Technically, he could have caught the cops on you day one. He just kept telling himself the moment he turned around, you'd be back. Like a real cat. And really, the only thing he meant to do for you to stay away was to hit you, cause in the end, he always folded. Fed you, kept you safe, gave shelter, as reluctant as it was. Bakugou made himself a pokeball with teriyaki chicken. It was the simplest meal he could think of. Sitting down in his living room, he began eating quietly. With the TV on, was scrolling through social media. It was then he saw a post about Deku visiting an amusement park earlier today. Making it a whole fucking event. To this day, the quirkless number one was unable to realize his own fame and that he was a public person and that everywhere he went there were fans. But in his company was also someone else. Aizawa's adopted daughter, Eri. A knot formed in Bakugou's gut. The truth was that he had always been jealous of Deku saving the little girl from the Yakuza. Without him. It was just so cool and heroic, and he hated to admit it. Deku even fought the Yakuza boss. He had been bursting with jealousy that day, and he was still boiling with it whenever he saw the white-haired girl. Returning his dishes to the sink, rinsing them before throwing them into the washer. Well, that put a dampener on the mood, he thought. Fucking Deku, he thought. Of course, there were always new people to rescue. There were always new adventures to have, and villains to capture, but there was just something about the Yakuza situation. Perhaps it just happened at just the right moment to imprint on him this much. And the fact that Eri was put in the care of Aizawa, and she was constantly around. Maybe it was the fact that he was jealous or something that was just so positive that made him feel like an absolute dick, but he just couldn't get over it. Bakugo sighed, turning his head towards the stairs to his bedroom. And after ascending the stairs, his head poking up from the stairwell, he noticed you, curled up at the edge of the bed, eyes closed, tail neatly wrapped around you. Immediately he sighed, annoyed, causing one of her ears to flick and your mouth to perk up a little. Oh, you were just pretending to sleep. His eyes narrowed and he continued up the final few steps, stopping at his dresser to switch out of his streetwear. Bakugo was a bit of a clean freak, sure, but when it came to his bed, he had even more cleanliness rules that he was very proud of. Especially since his own sweat could cause explosions. And cheekily, you opened one eye as you watched him change. But then, "Oh, Bakugo, you didn't tell me you're half horse!" You jumped up, scaring Bakugo so much he almost fell. "What the hell are you talking about?" Giggling, you rolled on your back. Blushing, he covered himself. "I wanted to say that for a long time, but guys usually aren't hung enough to warrant the reaction. But you are, yeah." "You're disgusting." You growled in response, lazily hanging one arm down the bed as you stared at him with flirtatiously narrowed eyes. "Yeah, I mean, if you feel weird that I called it a horse length, we both know it isn't. It's just way bigger than the others I've seen." From one second to the next, he stood in front of you. He grabbed a fistful of your hair painfully, forcing you to stare into his face. And only for a moment did your heart skip a beat out of fear. But how many others? The moment he said that, you lowered your guard again. "Jealous?" He blinked. Once, twice, thrice. And that's when his face softened into a confused grimace. "You know, I think so. But why?" He had even forgotten to cover up. That's how furious he had been. Your tail whipped through the air as you couldn't hide your excitement. His grip on your hair had lessened in his confusion, and so you jolted up, placing your paws on his muscly chest as you began to excitedly knead his skin. "Would you prefer it stay? Would you prefer if I stayed here, Bakugo?" You heard him grinding his teeth, and happily you sped up your kneading. "It would mean that I stopped seeing other people." "Oh, you want me here this much? I can see that. How about I start calling you Meowster too?" "Yeah!" He grabbed around your hip tightly, pressing against his chest. You almost couldn't breathe. And then he threw himself onto the bed, burying you beneath him. Excited, with your little heart pounding, you stared up at him. His entire weight was on you. His mouth was feeling your shoulders, nibbling at your sensitive fur-covered skin. All your hairs were standing up in excitement. His hands brushed over your body, pleasantly but also aggressively. He was completely overpowering, not giving you an inch or more, giving you a whole lot of inches. Your claws dug into his back, not to hurt him but more for purchase. In his grasp became nothing but a toy. You were being used, you could tell, and you absolutely loved it. It was exhausting and overwhelming, an overload of sensations and passions. Bakugou bit into your neck, and you screamed and purred. Hushing into his ears, "Oh, what's this?" It was then that your body became pleasantly loose almost immediately, allowing him access to every little nook and cranny of your body. Bakugou awoke, his head feeling it was filled with wool, and his vision was a little blurry. He wanted to raise his body to wash his face, but there was a weight pushing down on him around his navel. And so he just quickly rubbed his eyes, using his palms until he could see properly. And to his surprise, he found you on him. Usually, you were gone in the morning. In your sleep, your cheek was rubbing over his stomach, and your tail lazily twitched. He blinked and reached forward. He placed his hand on your head, giving you scratches. You purred in your sleep. You purred in your sleep, mumbling, barely audible. Meowster. Yeah, sure. He could work with this. Hey, thank you for watching the video until the very end. If you managed to get this far, leave a comment with the word pickles below as our little secret. But before I say goodbye, I'd like to shout out all of my lovely high-tier channel members, aka Darling Stewards, for keeping me and this channel alive. We have Jaws, Melofia, Nicole Hatcher, Maxicat, Alison Watkins, Bella Mare, Mystic Jade 111, Giovanna Moretti, Twilight Mia, Angry Boxman, Hella, Anonymous Weep, and Nicodemus D. And lastly, I'd like to mention all my other supporters for being awesome, and thank you. I'm eternally grateful for all of your donations. Thank you, and goodbye.